You're going to hear this term discussed periodically. The term is equity, and you're going to hear it discussed typically in wrong ways. You're not going to hear it used like it should be used. I'm going to try and define it using a dictionary definition essentially in this video. But I want to talk today about equity on the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt, and today is Thursday, the 23rd of September of 2021. Thank you for everyone who's here on Rumble, on the podcast, and on YouTube. And again, the subject for today will be equity, and we're going to go very quickly through my notes in order to kind of give you a baseline for what I'm going to be talking about today. I want to take just a moment to not to truly discuss equity. Wait, hold on. What? Yeah, that's right. Not to truly discuss equity, but to discuss what various in the political and media classes count equity. The first thing I probably ought to say is, based on a meaningful definition, I'm a firm believer in the concept of equity. That being true, what many are trying to term equity, I have little to no use for. Let's take, for example, the recent removal of treatment assets, or the pending removal, more correctly, of treatment assets from Florida in the name of equity. That, let's see, where am I? Okay, so, excuse me, I've lost my place. I'm back. The person I heard talking on that, and I'm not going to go into names, others have done so already to begin with, essentially said one of the dopier things I've heard where it's concerned. Essentially, they said something like, well, Florida shouldn't get more than, say, Wyoming. On its face, this is a ridiculous statement. It doesn't take a genius to understand why. Wyoming has a population of just over 700,000 people. Let's say it was 800,000, if you want to be generous. Florida, on the other hand, appears to have over 20 million. This alone is reason to allot more resources to Florida than to Wyoming. You want to talk about equity, that's a piece of that. If that's not reason enough, consider this. At the time the statement was made, Florida was experiencing a surge in the thing that those resources would have been used for. Where, as far as I'm aware, Wyoming wasn't. The point here is one directs resources where they're needed. If Florida wasn't dealing with high numbers, and Wyoming was, I would argue more resources might need to go to Wyoming than to Florida. Even without a large number of per capita cases. In Florida, though, it stands to reason they might need as much or more treatment products as Wyoming. That seems pretty reasonable to me. This is why I'm not typically willing to accept discussion of equity. The assumption that's made is that it's somehow unfair to send more resources to Florida than Wyoming, and that it's inequitable, right? Is that really true? Not so much. It's just a way for dishonest people to couch things in ways that sound good and plausible. Want to discuss equity? Show me where inequity is truly occurring, then we'll talk. I just want to be clear, right? Using the example that I've given you to this point. But before we do this, let's go ahead and actually do the equity definition. I'm going to use the standard definitions that I use, which is I go to DuckDuckGo and I type in a search like equity definition. That's what I did in this instance. And here's the result. As you can see, the state or quality of being just or fair, something that is just and fair. Justice achieved not simply according to the strict letter of the law, but in accordance with principles of substantial justice, which, by the way, that's not a proper definition, but anyway, and the unique facts of the case, an equitable right or claim. That, by the way, is horrible for a definition. Why? Because you don't use a word in its definition, and that equitable is a form of equity. It can't be done in that way. Ownership, interest, blah blah blah. This is all the stock meanings and so forth, and we're not going to talk about those today. That's not where we are, what we're talking about, and so forth. What's important is this. Equity is about, quote, justice. And arguing, say, for example, that a place with 20 million people shouldn't get more of something than a place with 700,000 is an obviously bad argument. And let's be clear. I can't make an argument that Arkansas should get more than Florida by any means, even though we've got something like 3 million people in the state, because still Florida has 20 million people in their state. Truthfully, none of this ought to be being managed by the government at all. They shouldn't have their grubby hands in it at all, particularly not the federal government. If anybody should be handling it, it should be the state government. But in reality, it should be handled on a need basis, and it should be handled by the people who are requesting it. Now, can I see the government having a position and saying, oh, we've got people telling us we need a whole bunch of this and asking us if we can find resources, if they can help us to find resources out of state or out of country, even for these products? Well, yeah, I can see that. I don't think it's a really great use of government resource, because I don't have any reason to believe they'll do that much of a better job of it than anybody else. But that having been said, I can see that much involvement. But when you start saying we're going to grab control of this thing and we're going to stop it going from this place and start and assume that that's equitable because this other place would get less, when the other place obviously has, less than a 20 or less than a tenth of the population of the place that's getting more, and there's a surge going on in the place that's getting more. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding how you think that that's equity. Equity is a meaningful thing. Inequity is a meaningful thing. Addressing inequity is an important thing. Who addresses inequity is another matter, but the point I'm making here is I'm not talking down the idea of either equity or inequity, or dealing with inequity and trying to make things equitable. What I'm saying here is when these people use this term equity, they are not using it in meaningful, real, reasonable ways. So you need to watch. And this is something that you need to generally do, right? You need to watch news media folks. You need to watch politicians when they say things. I don't care who they are. I don't care what side of the aisle they're on. You need to look, you need to listen, you need to watch, you need to pay attention. And when you see them saying things that are bogus in some way, like using the word equity for something that it really doesn't mean, it's time for you to adjust your thought if you don't do another thing. Speaking out about it is, of course, something else that you can do, and that's what I'm doing right now. My intent is to say that there are people out there who are using this term, this equity concept, and they're using it improperly. They're using it to say things like everybody should end up with the same amount of everything. That's just not true. When you've got a person who works and works and works and works and gets a whole lot of something, then that person should end up with what they got. That's fair. That's equitable, whether you like it or not. If they choose to give it or sell it to somebody else, great. That's their right. But equity is not taking away from people who have worked their butts off to get what they got and giving it to people who haven't. That's not what equity is. The point is, if a person takes the time to do the work to make sure the resources are available, they should be rewarded, and in my opinion, they should be rewarded in a free market sense largely for having done that act if they choose to actually dispense with the product in question, with the thing, whatever it is, product or service in question, right? So this is what this is my take on equity. Is equity a meaningful thing? Yes. Is inequity a meaningful thing? Yes. Should we work to reduce inequity? Yes. Is a reduction of inequity about taking from people who have worked very hard to get what they have and giving to people who have not? No, it is not. That doesn't mean that people who have not worked hard shouldn't get things. It means that they should realize that the reason they don't have things is that they haven't worked to get those things. This is the old ants storing things away and some other critter asking the ants for what they've stored away when they spent their entire summer working to build that stuff up. That's what this is. And so that's when you talk about inequity. Inequity is actually taking from people who have taken the time and effort to do something and giving to people who haven't, instead of making it so that they have to go and ask and probably pay for that thing. All right, I need to go ahead and wrap up. This is the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host, I'm Kurt, and today is Thursday, the 23rd of September of 2021. We're working towards that weekend. Tomorrow will be Friday, the 24th of September of 2021. Thank you for everyone who's been here on Rumble, on the podcast, and on YouTube. Remember, Rumble is my preferred platform. Obviously, I prefer that you watched me there. You can give me a plus or a boxing glove. That is a positive rumble, or you can give me a minus, which is a negative rumble if you choose to do so there. You can give me a thumbs up or a like on YouTube. You can also give me a thumbs down or a dislike on YouTube. Obviously, I prefer positive feedback, but if you find that there's something that you consider problematic about what I'm doing or saying, by all means, let me know. Keep in mind that wherever you can comment, I will do my best to listen to the comment. Mostly what I get is junk comments. I've had a few that aren't, but not very many. I'd really appreciate getting more, and I'd really appreciate people getting into the substance of what they liked or didn't like about what I had to say and why I might be right or wrong in what I have to say, because I'd like to be corrected if I'm wrong just as much as anybody. Well, maybe more than most people, because I really want that to happen. In any case, the subject for today has been equity. Tomorrow we're going to talk about they're not paying attention. This is going to be kind of an interesting one. It's for all of you paranoid folks out there, among others. They're not paying attention. We'll get into that. We'll talk about it, and hopefully in the meantime, you'll have a good day. Things will go well for you, and you'll keep on trucking towards that weekend. And hopefully we will see you again on tomorrow's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This video is recorded on Thursday, September 23rd of 2021. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I hope you found it entertaining or instructional, or maybe both. If you want to see more from me, you can go to blogs.kpschubert.com. That's blogs.kpschubert.com. I am on Twitter, Parler, and Minds.com. My handle on each of those is @kpschubert. That's @kpschubert. I have a Rumble and a YouTube channel. They are the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble and YouTube. I have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is Kurt's Religion and Politics as well. I am on Patreon. If you want to support me, that's one of the better places you can do that. And you will find me at Kurt's Religion and Politics on Patreon. I have a podcast. The podcast is podcasts with an S, .kpschubert.com. That's podcasts.kpschubert.com. I think you should be able to find me with relative ease on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify as well. The best way I find to do that is to look for Kurt's Religion and Politics. You can try to use the Daily Summation. I find that it doesn't work as well as a general rule, but you can always try that. I'm glad to have you aboard today, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow.